Hello there, my name's Chris Sanderson. I am Head of Procurement here at NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and I'm going to talk to you today about an initiative that we're taking forward this year that we're calling Diversifying Health Board Supply Chains. It's an initiative that involves NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and NHS Lanarkshire Health Board, and also where both health boards are working in conjunction with the Supplier development programme. In terms of what's driving the initiative, there's a few things. We have a desire to look beyond what you might call traditional procurement metrics that you might characterise against procurement into the sort of wider societal benefits of procurement spend. Over the past couple of years, we're trying to link more with our colleagues in public health and health improvement within the health board to try and look beyond those traditional metrics, as I say, around savings and cost efficiencies into these other areas that link to the public health agenda. We're also driven by some legislative drivers. In Scotland, we have the Procurement Reform Scotland Act, and there are general duties within that around sustainability and supported businesses, and some specific duties around community benefits. Also, our local strategy drivers, we know who we spend our money with. We're able to analyse that every year, and we can categorise the nature of our spend, and we've got some market intelligence. But we want to know more about the actual SME base within our local authority areas rather than just who we spend our money with. And we also are required under the Procurement Reform Scotland Act to have a published procurement strategy. And as we've been updating our procurement strategy within our health board and in other health boards, we are starting to incorporate these types of objectives into our procurement strategies. And finally, when you're in a position that I am in, like myself, as a head of procurement in a public sector body, there is a responsibility that goes with that. And it's simply a case of, because I am in a position where I can advance this agenda and I feel that I want to, and obviously that is what I'm going to try and do over the forthcoming year and in the years ahead. The background to the initiative is that the procurement departments at both of the health boards that I mentioned, we're increasingly, as I said, making these links with our public health and our health improvement teams around the role of procurement within that overall community wealth building agenda. And in Greater Glasgow and Clyde, there was an opportunity through the Health Anchors Learning Network, HALN, to bid for a health foundation grant to take this initiative forward, and that was successful. And in the Greater Glasgow and Clyde's Health Foundation bid, it involved us commissioning the Supplier development programme to utilise their expertise to help us engage with SMEs within our local authority areas. NHS Lanarkshire have also taken their work forward through local funding streams and have also commissioned the Supplier development programme to take forward a very similar agenda. It's important, I'm mentioning NHS Lanarkshire as well. The reason for that is that together, Greater Glasgow and Clyde and NHS Lanarkshire cover the 8 local authority areas that are in the Glasgow City region deal, which is our economic strategy. And together, both of the health boards cover almost 40% of health board revenue budgets within Scotland. So it's a big chunk together of NHS Scotland Health Board spend. In terms of the what we call the trade spend for Greater Glasgow and Clyde, we spend approximately £650 million per annum with third-party suppliers. There is a table there which gives you a breakdown of that spend by category. About a third of that spend is actually in the category of pharmaceuticals, and it's a combination of what we call secondary care drugs, which is drugs prescribed in hospitals, and things like home oxygen contracts. So that's about a third of the spend. The other 2/3 of the spend are in areas which, unsurprisingly, considering what our business is in the areas of medical devices and clinical consumables and medical equipment. We have a category that we call health and social care, which is about services that we commission that are delivered directly to end clients. That can be drug and alcohol addiction services or patient advocacy services and so on. We also have large chunks of spend around ICT and IT, which we would sort of call e-health as well within the health boards. And we have things like utilities and energy, things that you might expect as well in there. Important to know, in any health board in Scotland, approximately 50% of that trade spend is covered by what we call Category A or Category B contracts. Category A is pan-public sector contracts that are procured on behalf of the entire public sector by either Crown Commercial Service, which are part of the UK Cabinet Office, or Scottish Procurement, which sit within Scottish Government. Then we have Category B contracts, which are sector specific to the health service, and we have an organisation called National Procurement, which sit within a national health board called National Services Scotland, and National Procurement do contract on behalf of all the health boards for where we have common sector specific requirements, and that is typically medical devices and clinical consumables and the medical equipment and that sort of thing. In saying that, although that covers 50%, there is another 50%, which is what we would call Category C contracting, which is where the health board itself goes out to tender, advertises those opportunities, and we enter into contracts on behalf of the health board with third-party suppliers. And in the table, we see some examples of where that's more common, and that can be particularly in our kind of estates and facilities areas. It can be in some of our sort of corporate spend areas, and so on. And so I suppose the main message is, although there is a big chunk of the spend that's contracted on a sort of national or sector specific basis, there still is another 50% there that's contracted for at local health board level. The local spend within Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board, we're able to identify this using a software tool that we upload data into annually. And we've been able to identify in Greater Glasgow and Clyde that approximately 12% of our trade spend with third-party suppliers is spent with businesses that have a headquarters base in one of the 6 local authority areas within Greater Glasgow and Clyde. That doesn't well, first of all, we'd acknowledge that doesn't maybe take account of large suppliers that are maybe headquartered somewhere else in the UK, but might still have a significant presence within Scotland. So that's just a little bit of a caveat, but it's the only reliable measurement that we've got at the moment. So that's about £77 million worth of spend within Greater Glasgow and Clyde that's spent within the 6 local authority areas. And over at NHS Lanarkshire, the figure's similar, about 10% spent within the local authority areas. And whilst that figure might seem a bit low, I suppose the thing to know is that given what the health boards do spend their money on, as I said, maybe a third would be pharmaceuticals, and then a big chunks around medical devices and clinical consumables, medical equipment. A lot of these suppliers are global, given the nature of what we're talking about. And so it's perhaps not a surprise that the figure is it seems low when you first look at it. But that's just the reality of where we are just now, and that is our current baseline that we're looking to improve on. The next slide I wanted to talk about was around what I'm calling competing tensions. I think it's just important to acknowledge this. On the one hand, what we have is the NHS Scotland procurement strategy over the last 15 years has been about expanding the level of contract coverage by our national procurement organisation in those common areas. As I say, we're up to that sort of 50% level now. And the idea there was to try and aggregate the spend across Scotland, contract once on behalf of all the health boards to drive down costs, and to have suppliers that can provide that common coverage across all the health board needs in those volumes that are required. There also has been a drive for what we call centralised hospital logistics. So the goods that are supplied into our hospitals in terms of our wards, our emergency departments, our theatres, a lot of that now comes from our national distribution centres, and it's a sort of modern just-in-time logistics service. and that has involved an aggregation and consolidation into a sort of hub and spoke distribution operation. Now, to some extent, that does run slightly counter to the local SME agenda, because that's about volume and it's about aggregation. So that has been happening over the last 15 years, and I'm not criticising that policy, but that's just the reality of what has happened over that period. The other tension is that when we do tender locally, any procurements which have a contract value over £50,000 are governed by external regulations. So that's the Procurement Reform Scotland Act or the Public Contract Scotland regulations. And those regulations require those procurements to be conducted in an open, transparent and non-discriminatory manner. And it means that we can't simply directly award a contract to a local SME. Even if we wanted to, we have to abide by these legal external regulations. However, on the other side of those competing tensions, we do have this desire to encourage SMEs, to encourage to look at where we can do more with supported businesses, and we also have these government policy ambitions, which they do see procurement as a sort of lever around some of these government policy ambitions. So that's kind of on the other side, and then just within our health boards, we have a sort of health boards or localism agenda that we're starting to articulate more within our procurement strategies, and that's what's driving us more in that direction. So, as I said, there are some tensions, there are some competing tensions, and I think it's important just to acknowledge that they're there. But as I say, we're going to see what we can do more around just supporting and encouraging the SME side. Just another slide here, briefly, I'll talk about this. This is the Greater Glasgow and Clyde procurement team. We've got about 150 staff. We have a team that deal with commercial commodity teams that deal with commercial activity. It tells you on the slide there how that's broken down. We have a senior team that's myself, Deputy Head of Procurement and so on, and we have other senior members of the team. I won't dwell on that, but just to say that there's a link there that will take you to our external webpage, and you can read more about how the procurement team are made up and what it is that we do. The other thing just to note is that we do have some devolved procurement areas, so IT procurement is sitting in a devolved team, and we also have a capital planning team which deal with large complex construction projects. Okay, so finally, our plan for 22-23, the year ahead. The plan is that ourselves as NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde and NHS Lanarkshire, we're going to work together over the next 12 months, working with the Supplier Development Programme and their ability to reach out into the SME base and to hold a series of supplier engagement sessions like this one to learn more about our SMEs and for us to understand if there are any barriers that would prevent more SME participation. We do have to conform and work to the procurement regulations that I spoke about, but there could be simple things that we could be doing that would help perhaps tweak our processes or change some of the way that we do things that might just help more SME participation. We're trying to identify we have a work plan for the year ahead, which are the procurements that we know that we're going to undertake, and we're trying to look for ones that might be more relevant for the SME base, for SME participation, and we'll look for the Supplier Development Programme to help us publicise them a bit more. We've identified 3 at the moment, one on grounds maintenance, one on pest control services, and one on HIV and hepatitis C services that are services delivered directly to end clients. So there's 3 there that we've identified that we think may be particularly prevalent for the SME base, and we will, as I say, look to work with the Supplier Development Programme to try and have a focus and publicise these more. So that's the plan. That's what we're aiming to do this year. I hope you found that session interesting in terms of giving you a bit of context about how we operate, who we are, what it is that we do, and what's driving this. Our mark of success will hopefully be if we can see that needle moving slightly on that 12%, if we can see that trade spend increasing with our SMEs, then hopefully that's the measure of the success of this initiative. So as I say, hopefully you found that interesting and enjoyable. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you found that interesting to hear from me. Funny watching myself back on a video like that, but there we go. I'm Chris Sanderson. I'm Head of Procurement here at NHS Glasgow and Clyde. I'm joined here on the panel today with some of my colleagues from the Health Board. I have James Warnock, who works in our IT devolved procurement team, who leads that team. James is here because we think there may be some IT related questions, just a bit of a hunch that we've got. And I'm also joined by Sarah Cockram, who is a senior commodity officer who deals with the estates procurement, because again we have a bit of intelligence that says that we might have suppliers that are in that area here today. And also joined finally by my colleague here, Kelly Rogers, who is our interim commercial team manager, who leads our team of commodity managers for all our different commodities that we contract in, and has good overall knowledge of what we're doing this year and what our priorities are. And as I say, I've been here with the Health Board for just over a year. Prior to that, worked in other health boards and other head of procurement roles, so have developed a bit of a broad knowledge of all things procurement in the NHS as well. So we're open to your questions if you want to fire away. Okay, we've got one question here, which says, how many contracts will we be putting out this year? And that's a good question. So what we have, I've sort of mentioned it you heard it on the video there, we've got a sort of commercial work plan that says what that typically is comprised of is where we know that there's local health board contracts that are due for renewal, we'd obviously plan to retender them, so we can scan across that timeline and know what they are. And then also what we have is our national procurement organisation that I mentioned before. They have a commercial work plan that we see just before the start of each financial year, and then we blend the two things together in terms of local health board contracting and us getting on and implementing the contracts that have come out of our colleagues at national procurement. We do have that in a work plan. If you were to go to our website, there was a link on the slides earlier. If you go to the publication section, you will see our last procurement annual report. Now, it came out about this time last year, and we're working on the new one. But in that annual report, you will see a sort of, as required under the guidance for the annual reports, you will see a sort of forward look of the next 2 years worth of what we think our contracting activity will look like. So there's some information there. Around that. The new annual report is in the works, and it will be on the website shortly. And I would say that for any contracting authority, we all have to do procurement annual reports, and we all have to include a section that's the forecast of the next couple of years worth of tenders and things that we'll be putting out. So that's a source of information there. But other than that, really, I would sort of encourage all suppliers and SMEs in particular to make sure that your details are you've got a profile on the Public Contracts Scotland portal, that your details are up to date, and that you make sure that you've got your alerts set up for the particular industry sectors that you're interested in, because really that is the advertising portal that all public bodies in Scotland will use to advertise tender opportunities. So I would encourage you all to make sure you're on that Public Contracts Scotland portal. Let's see, another question that we had it says, as a small company with 3 employees, is there any opportunity to apply for very small sections of a contract? What we're always trying to be mindful of when we do put contract opportunities out is that we are aware of the need to look, if we can, to break those requirements down into smaller lots if we can do that. It doesn't always necessarily work in terms of what the health board's requirements are, but we do always try and look at that if we can break it down into smaller lots. So if it is broken down into smaller lots, you will be able to apply for maybe one lot only. But I suppose what I would say is that unfortunately you can't sort of cherry pick the elements of a contract that you want to apply for and only bid on that. So it is difficult. You can understand from a buyer point of view, if the contract is split into too many lots, then that becomes difficult from a contract management perspective. But on the other side, on the other hand, we are aware of the SME agenda, and we do try and wherever we can, where it's appropriate, break it down into smaller lots. So if it's broken down into smaller lots, then the answer would be yes. So it's just that, in each contract is slightly different. Another question that we've got here is, what's the price quality ratio for NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde contracts? I don't know, I could maybe pass this one over to maybe Kelly, because I think no two contracts are the same, but we can give you some general advice on that.
Yeah, so basically every contract is kind of unique, and the price quality split will be decided as part of the process, depending on many different factors. For example, for our health and social care contracts, a lot of the time the budget is actually set. So in that instance, it would be 100% quality that we're looking at, because there's no commercial evaluation. For some of them, it could be 70-30 split in favour of cost. Yeah, so it will be clear in the contract documents what the split will be, but it's never really the same for any two contracts.
Okay, thanks Kelly. Just looking at what other questions that we've got here then. It says here, our business is located out with Glasgow but operates throughout Scotland. Can we still tender for contracts? I think I was thinking maybe Sarah, you could maybe speak about that, because maybe from an estates point of view, there can be times, when a supplier needs to be able to be reactive to certain requirements, and there is a proximity issue. But I don't know if you just want to say generally how we would, if we had a particular, let's say, an estates tender out, and how would that apply in terms of people wanting to bid who went within the Glasgow area?
Yeah, reactive times can be quite important from one contract to another. Some may not even have really short reaction times, but to use an example, and one which I am have been dealing with over a period of time, is say winter gritting services, or ground maintenance and winter gritting. As you may or may not be aware, that there would be a reaction time. Say, I'm just saying this off the top of my head, maybe for 1 hour for a gritting lorry to be on site to ensure the safety of visitors and staff and patients entering that site. Other examples could be contractors who need to be available, say like we've had a burst water main, or say a burst pipe in a hospital. Then on a plumbing contractors framework, there could be also there'd be a minimum time for turning up. But what we did in the past was we'd have almost like emergency response times. So that could be like an hour, but then you could also have perhaps maybe something up to 4 hours, depending on that urgency. So that kind of gives you an idea of how I've delivered contracts in the past, and I hope that helps you a little bit. So,
thanks, Sarah. Okay, I've got some more coming in here. Question here says that there is a heavy emphasis on SMEs. If a company's only slightly larger than the 250 employees, to allow it to fall into this category, will that be detrimental to their tender application? Often tenders ask to tick a box if you come within the SME category, but don't ask how many employees if you're not able to tick that box. I guess I'll respond to that by saying, that yes, this initiatives aimed at trying to reach out to SMEs, but no, I mean, when it comes to doing the tender, we would absolutely not discriminate. If a company was or was not an SME, it wouldn't come into it in terms of ultimately what you're looking for is that if it's a tender, does the supplier first of all meet the pre-qualification selection criteria that we set out, are they capable of undertaking the contract in terms of a number of measures that we'd have there? And then you would be looking at the bid in terms of, you know, the ability to deliver the contract and how the contract would be delivered. So whether the company was an SME at that stage, whether the supplier was an SME or not, would not really, you know, come into it in terms of the actual scoring of the tender. And we simply couldn't. I mean, that would be that would be grounds for, you know, straight away grounds for a legal challenge. So yeah, I think so. No, it wouldn't matter if the company was just a bit over an SME size.
Chris, can I just add to that? Sorry, the single procurement document does ask the size of the business, but it's not scored, and it's not asked so that we can you know, put suppliers forward or take them out. It's just so that we know if the supplier is an SME or not, so it doesn't make any difference to the evaluation.
Okay. There's another one here that says, will GGC and Lanarkshire do local health board tenders together out with the national frameworks? Right, first of all, again, I'll start off with this one. We have a general instruction in the health boards that came out back in 2012 through a chief executive letter that did say that, you know, where there is a national or local or regional contract, the expectation is that we will use them. So we won't really, you know, if there's already a national contract or whatever there, the expectation that we would use it. However, what I would say is that if we're doing local contract activity, where no national contracts available, the bit about collaboration, yes, we are trying to work closely between Glasgow and Lanarkshire and others sometimes as well. So, for example, again, in estates, picking up on estates again, we are, you know, where we're doing trade contractor frameworks, we're trying to collaborate between the two boards because we've got such a common geography and we've got finite resource, really. And we're saying, you know, like if, for example, if one board takes the lead on, say, the plumbing contractors framework and names the other, and then vice versa, you know, the other board takes the lead on the, you know, electrical contractors framework and names the other, and we try to, so we are trying to share our work plans between the boards, and we're trying to look for common areas where there could be local contracting where it would make sense to do that. So, yeah. Okay, going back to the questions. It says here, does NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde only procure refurb projects via the NHS National Services Scotland frameworks, or are there other means? Again, I don't know, Sarah, if you want to take it. I mean, you'll know that just to say, you know, there is the National Procurement Minor Building Works framework that's intended for sort of 50k up to £1 million projects, and then there's Health Facilities Scotland. They've got the Principal Supply Chain Partner frameworks for sort of over £1 million projects. But I don't know if you want to say any more on that, Sarah.
I can't really add to that, as I've not had any further instruction from, you know, sort of internally about doing works up to 50k. But the minor, the one which National Procurement are running at the moment, you know, I've been updated that it's been extended until December this year. Apparently, I was told the PQQ was recently, they actually stopped the process. I would need to find a little bit more details while they've done that, but other than that, I couldn't give you any more details at the moment.
Thank you. I'm not sure who posed that question. I possibly suspect it might be someone who is maybe an organisation who has an alternative set of frameworks for these sorts of things. If it is, and by the way, this goes for any supplier who's listening in today, because we've done a number of these before, I think we've realised that there's a need to be able to give suppliers a sort of generic email box where they could maybe write into to tell us about, you know, the profile of their company, what they do, and just make us generally aware of them. So we have not got it on our website quite yet, but we've got a new email address, which I'll just say just now, which is it's ggc.procurementinquiries, all the one word. So ggc.procurementinquiries@ggc.scots.nhs.uk. We'll try and somehow put that around the Supplier Development Programme virtual spaces or whatever today, and it will shortly be on our external website, which if you just Google NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde procurement, you'll find. But that if you do want to write in to sort of introduce what it is you do, we're hoping that's a means for suppliers to be able to do that. I'll move on to some of the other questions we've got. There is one here that says, will there be any opportunities for older persons' care homes to work with the council? I'm not sure that one's relevant, because obviously this is NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board, so we don't really procure care home or care home provision or care at home provision. That would be the local authorities that do that under their various frameworks. I'm not sure. I would have to probably direct you to the local authorities for that one. Here's one that says, how will sustainability be weighted for within Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board tenders? And that's very topical. And we have lots of sustainability groups, and it's very high on the agenda these days. I could maybe pass you over to Kelly to speak generally about how we would approach that.
Yeah, so the requirement for a kind of community benefits question within a tender would be over 4 million. There's always kind of fair work practice questions in a tender that are weighted. Sometimes they're non-scored, same with kind of community benefits. Depending on what the tender is, sometimes we would want to address environmental factors, maybe within the single procurement document. So again, it kind of depends on the tender, how it would be weighted, I suppose, and what factors would be taken into consideration. Again, this would always be clear in the tender document, so it's important to read through these, because the questions asked and the weightings against them will be clear within the documents.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm scanning through the questions to see if there's anything IT related. I'm not seeing anything so far, so I'm not letting James have much of a chance to come in.
No,
here,
that's fine. That's okay.
Hopefully one will pop in at some point.
All I was going to say with regard to utilisation or access to our e-health business, we do use a lot of frameworks, but there's always scope. We use Scottish Government frameworks and Crown Commercial Services frameworks. We do have open tenders, so there's via PCS tender system, but there's scope for small companies to become on these national or UK-wide frameworks as potential suppliers that way, rather than via an open tender, or maybe not quite as big to be accessing levels of business. So if you know about the Crown Commercial Service frameworks, G-Cloud being a good example, or the Scottish Government frameworks where they have for different IT, the peripherals and things like that, that is a good way to gain access to NHS business from an IT perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thanks, James. I'll move on to see if there's some more questions we've had here. It says here, right, we're a Glasgow-based consortium of 500 plus creatives and small organisations interested in delivering creative projects within Greater Glasgow and Clyde. This may be as part of a capital project, engaging with a community or patient group, or involved with therapeutic activity. Who should we speak to about this kind of opportunity? I think probably, I think maybe a starting point, that email that I gave out, if you drop an email in there and just explain and expand upon that a wee bit more. I've got some thoughts on who we could connect you with within the health board, but I think we just need to know a little bit more about that one. But if you drop an email to that generic email box, just so it's just again ggc.procurementinquiries@ggc.scot.nhs.uk. Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. But if you drop an email there, we'll see if we can connect you to the right people with that one. There's one here that says, company with over 50 nursing staff, would it be better to contract 10 nurses to the one contract rather than different split contracts? I'm not entirely sure what's meant by that one. I'm not sure, is that a nurse agency? Or is it, for the suppliers that are writing these in, I don't see what the name of your supplier that who you're actually from. So I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm interpreting that one right. I don't know if you want to put another rephrase that maybe and put it back into the chat, and I'll come back to it. There's one here that says, we're a private healthcare facility based in Glasgow and we're interested in supporting the NHS waiting lists, offering initially local anaesthetic and day case procedures, moving into more complex day case procedures in future if there's a desire to outsource who would be the best member of your team to engage with to raise awareness of our interest and to understand areas where we may be able to offer our support and services. Okay, so it sounds like, so there's two frameworks. I'll take this one a little bit about it, but I might maybe hand over to Kelly as well. There's two national procurement frameworks in Scotland that cover what we would call in the health board sort of outsource and in-source activity. Outsource basically is when we would send activity out into the independent sector, the private sector. In-source is when we would typically then bring in a medical services company in to, for example, do outpatient appointments over the course of a weekend or things like that. There's two national procurement frameworks. They're both on the work plan this year to be re-tendered. So again, make sure you're on Public Contract Scotland and you will registered, etc., and you will see when National Procurement publish the contract notice for those new national procurement frameworks. Last time around, the way they did them was they used the new dynamic purchasing system style of frameworks, if you like, that came out in the 2015 regulations. And the good thing about a DPS is that obviously, if you don't get on it initially, there is the opportunity to then get on it during the lifetime of it through a pre-qualification process, so you won't miss out if you do miss it the first time. So that's what I would suggest. It's about to be re-tendered, but I don't know if you wanted more information. Certainly, I can maybe pass you over to Kelly just now, because we have a corporate commodity team who basically, the way it works is that our access planning team within the health board, who look after the waiting lists, would come to procurement if they were looking for in-source or outsource provision, and we would go through the procurement process with them. And we do have a team, and I don't know if Kelly, if you wanted to say any more on that.
Yeah, I think the important part I was going to say was that it's a DPS. So, like you say, Chris, if the opportunity is missed when the tender goes out, there's always an opportunity to add yourself on at a later stage. I would be happy to give details to the person at the kind of health board level that could help if anybody's got any further questions. So just let me know.
Again, so if you wanted to initially drop an email into the generic box I was talking about, we can then redirect it to the right person. Okay, moving on, we've got another one that says, do you do any quick quotes? Are these from existing suppliers, or do they go out to everyone more widely? This is quite a commonly asked question. The answer is yes, we do a lot of quick quotes. They are kind of ad hoc in their nature, because obviously if something's a repeat requirement, if it's an ongoing requirement, it would be better to either find a framework where we can access, or do a local health board contract or local health board framework. But there are occasionally ad hoc. There will be ad hoc quick quotes that we do. They are a little bit more prevalent actually in estates, because it might be a minor works project, and as you may know, that the threshold at the point they become regulated procurements is higher. It starts at 2 million. So I don't know. They are probably more prevalent in estates. So again, Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to maybe talk a bit more about how we would select the suppliers on quick quotes, and how we would seek to try and rotate the suppliers, and how many we would invite and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question to ask, because having been involved with the States for 8 years now, historically there will be suppliers which we'll know about, or at least the estates will know about, and it is the email address which Chris has given out, which is the ggc.procurement inquiries. If you would send in your details about who you are and what you're actually, what you actually provide, but we could actually then forward that onto estates to start considering, other suppliers which are out there, because as much as I love to say we know you're all out there, we don't. And so if you can email us, that'd be fantastic. But the realities of a quick quote, the advice within house is that any ad hoc quick quote will, for any kind of work, and it could be anything which is on a framework. I just like to say that before it complicates things. But if there was something we don't have on a framework, then the estates are advised to invite a minimum of 3 suppliers onto that quick quote, and what we do urge them to contact suppliers who they're dealing with, so they know that a quick quote's coming along. But the starting point would be is if you could, make yourselves known, please email us to the address which is given, and then we can take it from there. We can forward your details onto the estates teams.
Yep, thanks, Sarah. Okay, there's another one here. The question is, we specialise in the supply of compact electric vehicles and have recently provided a vehicle to NHS Cumbria Integrated Care. Is this something that might work for any of your sites? So I can probably take that one. So there is a national procurement framework for commercial lease vehicles and for lease cars as well. I'm not sure where it is in its life cycle of being retendered, but there are frameworks that we utilise that are available through national procurement. There also is, we do sometimes utilise Crown Commercial Service have got a framework for lease and commercial lease vehicles as well, which we have some from time to time. We've maybe utilised that as well. So I suppose it's just a case of making sure you get onto either the national procurement frameworks or the Crown Commercial Service equivalents, because as I say, that there is a general instruction to the health boards that if a framework exists from national procurement, etc., that the expectation is that we do use that. Otherwise, what would be the point in having national procurement in the first place, sort of thing. So that's really what I'd say around that. If you want more, if you want a bit more detail about those frameworks I'm talking about, we can give you contact details of the relevant category and commodity managers at national procurement. Then write into the email address and we can take it from there. There's one for you here, James. I think, why are frameworks used for IT procurement when there's no guarantee of work? Doesn't it mean that innovation isn't welcome in procurement to do things this way?
I suppose this was a general question. Why do we use frameworks? Which I think you've answered. It's seen as a more cost-effective route to market and it's a route to market option. To a certain degree, we would consider our requirements and do a route to market option appraisal to see what offers potentially the best value. But as you say, Chris, it's policy that we would look at framework if there's a framework there that can be used. And the benefit of that framework is it already has been tendered competitively, and there'll be a list of suppliers, or there could be a single supplier on a framework. I get the point. Potentially, if it's not a single supplier framework, there's no guarantee of business. That's always been one of the challenges of frameworks. But it doesn't mean that we don't then still encourage innovation, because as part of these frameworks, we can have further iterations called things like mini competitions, where we would look for innovation as much as possible as part of our requirements and criteria for award at times. So it's very much welcomed if it's the right thing to do at that time. IT is growing, as we know. It's the big thing at the moment going forward. There's lots happening. So we want to capture as much innovation in this space as possible.
Yep. Okay, thanks, James. And I noticed that I think I don't know if the external suppliers can see that, but you've certainly posted in the chat here you've pointed to where the IT, the Crown Commercial Service IT frameworks and also the Scottish Government ones are. I suppose that goes back to the point you were kind of making earlier, Wood, is it might be that you're not necessarily you might not be a first tier supplier to the NHS, but it might be an idea to perhaps approach and partner with a first tier supplier and become part of their supply chain. That could be an option. Right. Okay, one here that says, question, should I say in my tender that we are women-led, we're a women-led business, or does this not matter at the bidding stage? Kelly, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I don't think that would ever make a difference to the outcome of any tender process, whether it was women-led or not. So I don't think there's any reason to declare that.
Yeah. I think, when there was an earlier question that I think I skipped past actually that did say, what do we mean by diversifying our supply chain? Well, what we mean is what we're trying to do is at the moment we have, the supplier base that we've got right today. As I said in my video, 50% of that spend's covered by national frameworks, and the other 50% is kind of local contracts. And what we're trying to do is diversify, particularly around understanding more about the SMEs and what they've got to offer, and exposing ourselves more to the SME base. We are interested in sort of, we know that there's businesses out there that are like maybe certain characteristics, maybe more female-led, maybe more like BAME predominantly, or there could be supported businesses. Think they could have certain characteristics. What we're just really hoping with this whole initiative is that as we just engage more with the SME base generally, that businesses like that will, as a byproduct, will see these opportunities, will hear what we're doing, and will learn more about us. I think it's hard to really be so specific as to target the individual segments, if you know what I mean. So we're just trying to engage generally with the SME base, and if there's businesses with those particular characteristics out there, hopefully you're be part of that general initiative that we're trying to do. I see we've got kind of 10 minutes remaining, so I'll just try and kind of motor on with some of these questions. There's one that says, "Hi Chris, is the national contract holder for driver training for forestry and land Scotland? Do your logistics fleet side have any training requirements? The biggest outcome by making them a better driver is that we've reduced carbon emissions by around 20% post-training, so relevant to carbon targets." Good question. I don't know off the top of my head who we use for driver training. We do obviously have a fleet that usually our fleet doesn't go really beyond like a sort of Luton van size. I don't think we've even really got any 7.5 tonners. So we have, in terms of how hospital logistics works, that our national organisation run Arctics out to our hospitals where maybe the more advanced driver training is there. But we do have everything from sort of car-derived vans up to Luton vans, and we've got a centralised transport department and transport network now within GTC. So we're trying to, everybody that drives is getting pulled into a central transport department. So they are looking at training and development and all this. So I don't know the answer. So I think the best thing to do there is just email into our email address, which again, ggc.procurementinquiries@ggc.scot.nhs.uk. Put the email in, and we'll direct you onto our transport manager, and we'll see what we've got in place, and see what we can do. Next question: if national frameworks are coming out next year, will GDC wait for these and not do local health board tenders, even though the current frameworks are out of date? Sorry, I'll maybe hand you over, but I think the first thing to say on that is that where the national frameworks were expiring particularly during the pandemic period, national procurement did extend all those frameworks. So the frameworks won't be left to expire; they'll extend them. There is a part of the regulations that you can use to do that. Regulation 72, the Public Contract Scotland regulations to be precise. They've been utilising that regulation to extend the frameworks to keep the coverage there because of what happened during the pandemic, the diversion of resource, etc. So they are going to be re-tendering, so that there wouldn't be a gap. I think it's the point I'm making. There won't be a gap. They will extend them.
It might also be, Chris, if we're bringing a brand new framework out that we don't currently have in place, where we've maybe looked at the spend across different areas, we would think a national framework would be the best. The answer is, I suppose it depends, but normally we wouldn't wait, because we'd need to have, the best thing to have is the contractual cover. So that might only be for a year to allow the framework to be put in place, and then we would call from the framework.
Yep. Good point. Thanks, James. Okay, I think there's just a couple more questions left. Hopefully we can fit them in. The next one's relatively, are you having more events like this to be able to ask direct questions? Finding it really helpful, thank you. Answer is yes. We'll be having probably a lot more of these events over the forthcoming year. That's basically that's the whole, really point of our engagement with the Supplier Development Programme, and we are planning to have a lot more of these events. What we're hoping actually as we get further in that we might be able to sort of have, if we know that there's a lot of interest from, say, IT suppliers, we might be able to have an IT specific one. We might be able to have an estate specific one, but we're just doing them as general sessions at the moment, and we're trying to sort of make sure we've got enough people that can field the questions around the table. But yes, the answer is yes. We're planning to do a lot more of these throughout the year ahead. And there's one final one here. Is, do you have a platform that you use for ordering medical devices where suppliers can register their products if you're not on a Scottish framework? I think I was going to say the first thing I would say there is that if you're talking about innovation, there is a Scottish NHS Innovation Portal, which I can, if you wanted to email in, I can give you the web address for. But you could just Google it, you'll find it, NHS Scotland Innovation Portal. It came out a few years ago. It's specifically for suppliers putting forward, new innovative products, and there's a panel of people who can sort of assess them and give the inventor or the supplier feedback on how useful they might be and what if the needs there, etc., etc. So there is a portal that was set up, and there is a small team now within national procurement that's a sort of little innovation team that kind of deal with that side of things now. So if that's what that question was meaning, then there is a portal. Other than that, if you were to email in, if it was, say, the national contract for, I don't know, anti-embolism stockings, or national contract for, I don't know, orthopedic knees or something like that, then there are commodity managers at national procurement who, if it was just about saying, like, I've got a new product in my range, or I'm a new supplier in this market, we could put you, we can put you in touch with the relevant people at national procurement. And there is a last question. I think it's just a clarification on that last one. With over 50 nursing staff, can contracts be tendered with a wider range of staffing? For example, contract with 10 nurses to one contract. I'm still not sure I understand what that one means. Can any of my colleagues help me with that? What you think that one means? With over 50 nursing staff.
Sorry, I don't understand.
No, I don't understand it. With 10 nurses to one contract.
Not an area I've covered. With
No.
staffing, I'm afraid. Sorry to not be able to help.
We could take it if they post it into the email box.
Drop us an email into the email box, and we'll try and respond to you through that. Our department secretary monitors the email box, so I told her to prepare for some heavier than normal traffic this afternoon. So hopefully we'll get them filtered and sorted to the right people and get back to you fairly quickly. I think we're getting told we've got a 2-minute warning here to say that we're almost about to wrap up. I'm just going to see there's no further questions come in. I'm just going to go back to see if there was any ones that I just missed. Not sure. There was I think a question about medical gas services, but I think it's probably best that we could take that one offline and give you an answer. So I think what to do, again, whoever asked the question about medical gas services, put your email into the box, and we'll get somebody to answer that specific question for you. I don't see, there's maybe one coming in, I'm not sure here. Just looking at the the ticker tape on my right hand side here. We've got a minute to go. I don't think there are any more questions coming in. I hope for anyone that's been on, that's been listening in today, that this has all been useful. As I say, we are planning to do a number of these sessions again, so another opportunity. You'll see those sessions advertised through the STP website, who are publicising those sessions and trying to reach out and make people aware that we're having these sessions. So we're going to have some more. So if you think of something else, there'll be another opportunity to come and ask us. In the meantime, please, if you want to drop an email into that email box, that's what it's going to be there for going forward. If suppliers just want to even just introduce themselves, let us know what they do, we will get that in front of the relevant department, etc., just to increase that awareness of what your businesses are, etc. Or if you've got a specific question you want to ask us about how something works, or it could be it's a national procurement contract, but we can direct you to who the relevant person is at national procurement. We're quite happy to do that. So as I say, I'll say it again: ggc.procurementinquiries@ggc.scot.nhs.uk, and fire them in there, and we'll get back to you. Hope it was useful. I think that's us coming up on our time now. So thanks all for taking an interest in our session, and I hope you have a good day at the rest of the virtual event.